Did you know that in 1943, the government of an entire country banned a farming method so effective that the farmers who used it produced twice what their neighbors did? They didn't ban it because it was dangerous. They banned it because it made people stop needing to buy anything from them. That story has been buried for decades, and today, I'm going to tell you the whole thing. I'm Waldo, and if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, this is the moment. Because here, you won't find what they sell you at garden centers. Here, you'll find what actually works. When you put your hand in your garden soil, what do you find? Dark earth, moist, smelling like a forest after rain? Or compacted gray dust that cracks in summer and floods in winter? If you're like most gardeners I've talked to, you know that second type of soil well. The kind that seems to resist you. That absorbs fertilizer after fertilizer without ever really improving. The kind that makes you think maybe the problem is you. But it's not you. It was never you. The problem is that nobody explained what the soil really needs. And more importantly, nobody explained why that information disappeared. Today, we're going to change that. I'm going to share with you a $2 formula that works as a biological signal inside the earth. A signal that can make worms return to your garden in hours, and with them, the entire invisible machinery that turns dead dirt into living soil. But first, you need to understand the history. Stay, because what comes next changes how you look at your garden forever. Subscribe and hit the bell. This channel is built for people who want to grow real food in real soil. In 1943, a Peruvian agronomist named Augusto Carrillo visited a community of indigenous farmers in the Andean highlands. What he found left him speechless. On small plots, with simple tools and zero chemical inputs, those farmers were producing harvests that surpassed in quantity and quality the modernized fields in the valley below. Carrillo spent 3 weeks studying what they did and discovered something deceptively simple. Those farmers weren't feeding the plants, they were feeding the soil. With a fermented mix of ingredients anyone could find in their own kitchen, the result was dark, spongy earth, full of worms and microbial activity that produced, on its own, season after season. Carrillo documented the method and published it. And here's where the story gets uncomfortable. That same year, pressured by commercial interests, importers of synthetic fertilizers, the government issued a circular classifying certain organic fermentation methods as non-standardized. It wasn't a formal ban, it was something more effective. Invisibilization. Extension agents stopped teaching it, textbooks omitted it, and in 2 generations that knowledge went from common practice to old wives' tales. Why? Follow the money. After World War II, the factories producing ammonium nitrate for explosives needed a new market. Agriculture was the perfect answer. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizers arrived cheap, packaged with simple instructions. And alongside them came the pesticides, the fungicides, the root stimulators, an entire ecosystem of products designed to create dependency. The logic was ruthless. If you can make a gardener believe his soil can't function without your product, you have a customer for life. But if that gardener learns to build living soil that feeds itself, you lose him. Healthy soil is not a good customer. And that's exactly why what I'm about to teach you today took so long to reach you. If you're finding value in this, hit the like button. Let's keep going. Before I reveal the formula, you need to understand why worms change everything. Because if you don't understand this, you'll apply the method without knowing what you're actually building. Earthworms are possibly the most efficient engineers that exist in nature at garden scale. As they move through the soil, they create a network of channels that crisscross the profile in every direction. Those channels are the respiratory system of the soil. Through them circulates the oxygen roots need. Through them, excess water drains. Through them, moisture penetrates deeply during watering. When there are no worms, soil compacts, porosity disappears, and then every problem you know shows up. Water that won't drain, roots that won't deepen, plants that grow slowly despite receiving fertilizer. But that's only half of what they do. Worms feed on decomposing organic matter and expel it as castings. That material is one of the most biologically active substances in a garden. It's not just fertilizer. It's a combination of nutrients in directly absorbable forms, enzymes that improve microbial activity, and a physical structure that improves water retention without creating waterlogging. And there's a third point almost nobody mentions. Worms are an indicator. When their numbers increase, it means the entire underground ecosystem is improving. More beneficial bacteria, more mycorrhizal fungi, more soil fauna working in concert. So why do they leave? Soils too dry or hot, absence of organic matter, and exposure to chemicals that damage soil fauna. If your garden has been through years of conventional management, your worm population is a fraction of what it should be. Subscribe right now, because the formula is next. Worms don't move randomly. They respond to chemical signals with surprising precision. When there's actively decomposing organic matter, when bacteria are multiplying, the soil emits a very specific chemical signature. Gases, organic acids, fermentation alcohols, carbon dioxide. A mix that to a worm means exactly one thing. Here's food and ideal conditions. What the mix you're about to learn does is mimic that signature in a concentrated, accelerated way. We're not tricking the worms, we're speaking their language. When we combine blackstrap molasses with dry yeast, we trigger a fermentation that under optimal conditions starts producing results in less than 2 hours. That fermentation generates mild heat, produces small amounts of alcohol, and above all generates a column of carbon dioxide that filters downward when we pour it onto the soil. CO2 moving through the soil profile is one of the most powerful signals that exist for underground fauna. For a worm 12 inches deep, that pulse of CO2 diffusing through is the equivalent of smelling fresh-baked bread when you're hungry. And there's a second layer. The sugars and minerals in the molasses also feed soil bacteria. When they have a carbon feast available, they multiply at extraordinary speed. Within hours, the organic particles in the treated zone are covered in microbial activity. That not only reinforces the chemical signal, it means that when the worms arrive, they find exactly what they expected. Real food, not just an aroma. We're not forcing anything, we're activating a system that already exists and only needed the right signal to wake up. Now the formula. This mix requires no special equipment and the total cost doesn't exceed $2. You probably have half the ingredients at home right now. You need a clean 5-gallon bucket. Step 1. Water. If you're using tap water, fill the bucket the night before and leave it uncovered. In 8 hours, the chlorine will have evaporated. This matters because chlorine is designed to kill microorganisms, which is exactly the opposite of what we want. Ideal water temperature is between 82 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Too cold and fermentation starts slow and weak. Step 2. Add 1 teaspoon of unsulfured blackstrap molasses per quart of water. Molasses is not ordinary sugar. It retains the original minerals of the cane: iron, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Those minerals sustain fermentation more stably than pure sugar and complement the enzymatic activity of soil microorganisms. Find it at natural food stores or online. Step 3. Add 1 teaspoon of dry baker's yeast. The yeast is the starter motor. In the presence of sugars and adequate temperature, it wakes up and starts fermenting within minutes, generating the CO2 and aromatic compounds we want in the soil. Step 4. Add half a cup of brown sugar or raw cane sugar. This is quick fuel, so the yeast fires up strong from the first moment. Optional additions. A teaspoon of unfiltered apple cider vinegar enriches the spectrum of chemical signals. A handful of used coffee grounds contributes nitrogen and an acidity that activates certain soil bacteria. Mix everything well until completely dissolved. Leave the bucket in a warm, shaded spot for 1 to 2 hours. You'll know it's ready when you see a layer of small bubbles that continuously renew and you smell a deep, earthy, slightly sweet fermented aroma. That smell is the chemical signature we're looking for. You have between 2 and 4 hours to apply it before the peak of activity declines. Application. The when and how matter as much as the formula. Never apply this at noon in summer. The heat destroys microbial activity before it can establish. The ideal moment is late afternoon or early dawn, when the soil is coolest and worms are predisposed to move. Pour the mix slowly around the base of plants in the root zone perimeter, not directly on the stem. Pour slowly so the liquid penetrates rather than runs off. If the soil is very compacted, do a light water pre-soak first to open the surface. What you want is for the active liquid to descend, carrying its microbial payload and fermentation gases into the soil profile, creating that signal column that worms will detect from yards away. In the first hours, you won't see anything different on the surface. Everything important happens below. If you apply late afternoon and go out to the garden at 10 p.m. with a flashlight, you may see subtle movement, small undulations in the loose earth. In soils with some pre-existing life, 24 hours is usually enough to notice a clear change. In more degraded soils, it can take up to 48. Repeat the application once a week for 3 to 4 weeks. Not to artificially maintain the worms, but to build the ecosystem's confidence. So the soil perceives that zone as a place where conditions are stable and good. Here's the mistake most people make. They apply the mix, see it works, and do nothing else. 2 weeks later, the worms have left again. The mix is the invitation, but if the garden remains a hostile place, they'll leave as fast as they came. Step 1 for retention. Cover the soil. Bare soil is soil at risk. Without cover, the surface dries quickly, temperature fluctuates extremely, and worms avoid it. Apply a generous layer of organic material, shredded dry leaves, straw, wood chips. That layer keeps soil temperature stable, reduces evaporation, and provides the food worms need to stay. Step 2. Stop rototilling. When worms have been in soil for weeks, they've built deep vertical channels, horizontal galleries, chambers where humus matures. One pass of a rototiller destroys in minutes what took weeks to build. If you need to loosen soil, use a garden fork. Insert it vertically, rock it gently back and forth without flipping the profile. Let the worms do the deep tillage they've been evolving to do for millions of years. One warning, not all worms are equal. Asian jumping worms of the genus Amynthus arrived through imported ornamental plants and substrates. They're aggressive surface feeders that consume mulch at extreme speed. What they leave behind has a granular, loose texture like coffee grounds, dry, structureless, unable to retain water. To identify them, check the clitellum, that differentiated band on the worm's body. In beneficial worms, it's darker and raised. In jumping worms, it's flat, milky white, like a painted band encircling the body uniformly. They also thrash violently and literally jump when handled. If you find them, remove and destroy them. Don't move them to compost. Their eggs are extraordinarily resistant and spread easily. We're inviting the builders, not the destroyers. And here we arrive at the heart of it all. Look at the model they sold us for decades. The soil depletes, and they tell us the answer is in the next product. Fertilizer to replace lost fertility, potting mix when the soil gives up, insecticide for the pests that proliferate when the soil's immune system doesn't work. Every problem generates a new product, and every product creates the conditions for the next problem. The knowledge we've recovered today comes from a completely different paradigm. The farmer who read the soil like others read the sky, who knew that feeding the soil was more effective than feeding the plant. And above all, that real fertility isn't bought, it's built. Beneath your feet, right now, there's a universe, a complete ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, worms, and dozens of other organisms that have spent millions of years perfecting the ability to turn dead matter into new life. For decades, they told us that world was irrelevant. They were wrong. That underground world isn't dead. It's sleeping, and it responds with surprising speed when you give it the conditions it needs to wake up. With a few ingredients, a bucket of water, and the willingness to observe what happens over the next 24 hours, you can take the first step toward a garden that works with you instead of against you. The earth is still there, still capable. The only question is, will you try it this week? If this video opened your eyes, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who's been frustrated with their garden for too long. I'm Waldo. Take care of your soil.